we had the largest decline in wholesale values in over a year.
I put an end to that as quickly as we started that whole process. The mistake that has scared away buyers.
Don't take away my Hemi engines. Don't take away my big V8.
So that puts about 30 cars that we have that are ready to be sold, not at my dealership.
It was like somebody hit a light switch, and all of a sudden customers came back into the dealership again. Hey, how would you like to get your hands on my Momo?
All right, Brandon, you mentioned in a video that you don't list all your vehicles online, and there are some in a backup lot. Do you think that hurts your total profit? The answer is yes, and we're experiencing that right now. So what's going on is that we're loading up for tax time. We're about a month and a half away from tax time hitting us, so we are buying as many cars as possible. But my lot will only hold a certain number of cars. So we have cars that are ready, but we have to, Ray's getting really dark again, but we have to move them over to a storage lot to be able to get them because we just don't have ready. All of our cars that we're working on right now, they have to be at our lot so the guys can work on them. So that puts about 30 cars that we have that are ready to be sold, not at my dealership. And it's not, we can't just put them on our website and then have one of our guys go grab the car if a customer wants to see it. It's not going to be efficient. We've done that before. And what ends up happening is a customer wants to see one that's at the storage lot. We bring it to them. They test drive, like, oh, yeah, I like this one, but I want to see this other one that's at your storage lot too. So then we have to send a guy to go get the other car from storage lot. And then they do this 3 or 4 times and they end up not buying anything. So I put an end to that as quickly as we started that whole process. And this was on a lot where the previous lot we had, I could only put like 35 cars on there, and we had 100 at one point.
Wow.
So we had 2 different storage lots. Yeah, I'm so glad we're in the location that we're in now. I can hold comfortably about probably 85 cars where I'm at right now, and then we have other cars being stored. But that's why if you ever go to my website and I'd say, okay, we've got 135 cars right now, which I think is what we got, but you only see 45 for sale. That's why we got 30 in storage that are ready to go. We've got other cars that are being transported, and we've got probably another 30 that are being worked on right now. And then another 20 that are waiting to be cleaned up. So there's always more cars in the recon process than there is for us to have for sale. This is the case throughout the whole year. If I have 70 cars and I'm not loading up for tax time, then we'll have 25 for sale, and we'll have the rest of them that are being worked on at the time. This is just the never-ending cycle of cars. If I get to a situation where I have more for sale than we have that we're working on, then we're doing a bad job pricing our cars, because I want to move them faster than that, because it takes us a long time to get cars ready. It should not take us a long time to get them sold.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I saw some Black Book data from last week where we had the largest decline in wholesale values in over a year, week over week. Did you see that on the lower end cars that you typically are purchasing?
Yeah, we've seen it for the last 3 weeks. I'm assuming their data lags a couple weeks anyway. Whenever they're bringing up, I know they probably bring like Manheim auction data.
They carry about 95% of all market transactions is what they base their data on, and it's usually weekly. So
okay.
They just last week they saw a conversion rate in excess of 60% of cars being offered that were sold, and that the rate of decline in depreciation was the highest it's been in quite some time. It was almost a full point. It was like 8/10 of a point.
Yeah, I'll say in the
depreciation.
I'll say in the last 3 weeks, we've seen a big decrease in prices at auctions, and this has allowed us to buy a lot more cars. The interesting thing about this is typically when we see a big decrease in prices, think of over the last part of the year or right after tax time, when we get this like small like market crash, at least in the used car side of things around my price range stuff. you'll see a lot of no sales for a week or two. And we didn't really see that. It's like dealers were able to trade at the right amounts, or they knew the right amounts to trade for, or they're just like, you know what, we know prices are going down, so we're just cutting loose. So usually you'll get a lot of no sales or a lot of if bids, which an if bid means that there's negotiation that happens after the auction to be able to put the deal together between buyer and seller. But we really haven't seen a ton of that, at least from what I'm seeing, is that deal they're selling cars, which is a great thing for the car market, great thing for used car dealers. But yeah, I've absolutely seen this over the last couple months, and I would imagine it gets even worse throughout the end of this month, beginning next month. But then it'll be off to the races, and you'll see prices get right back to where they were probably November. They'll jump back all the way that far, and probably even higher than that, honestly. But it'll only last a month and a half.
I was just curious what you're seeing. Because I looked at the Black Book data today. It was emailed to me, and I was curious as to whether or not you're seeing it on your end, and you are. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, a great thing for the market, and I'm excited to see the end of this year too, because I think prices, we're going to have this whole correction, I think, throughout the year with this little blip for tax time, at least for the used car side of things. For new cars, when you were there, did tax time really affect you guys at all?
It wasn't so much as, well, to a degree, but it was really like March 1st. It was like somebody hit a light switch, and all of a sudden customers came back into the dealership again. That was in the Atlantic City area. And it was just the amount of customers coming through the door just skyrocketed in March. Now, obviously, some of it was due to tax time, because a lot of people, that's where their down payment came from. So, I mean, we saw it. You see it on the used car side. We saw it on the new car side, where people would use that as their down payment money for their new car. So
a lot of these used car managers that I talk to, like, they know tax time's coming, and they know that prices go to the moon at auction for a very short amount of time. Does that affect how the trade-in prices work whenever these dealers, or was there ever a situation where, I don't know if you dealt with the trade-ins or even the cars that went to auction, was there ever a situation where you were holding cars for like a month until tax time hit and then taking them to auction?
There were times that we would trade a sports car or a convertible in December, and we were in a position where we could afford to sit on it until spring and know that we weren't going to retail it, but that it would be a good car to take to the auction in March, as the spring selling season was starting, when somebody would be more interested in a convertible or a sports car. So even though I've worked for dealers that had a strict 60 or 90-day aging policy on their pre-owned cars, there were certain pre-owned cars that we would trade, that when we traded them, we just knew we were going to sit on them for 90 days before we took them to the sale.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, that's what we do too. Like if we have junk cars that either transmission, the motor's bad, something like that, that we know we're not going to put money into, so we're not going to sell it to one of our customers, we'll hold really after about September, we'll hold those cars and not dump them at auction until it comes to like the end of like tax time, when the prices are the craziest.
Yeah.
And that's when we'll take all of our cars that we don't want to sell to the public to the auction to sell to another dealer, because we know they're going to bring the most amount of money at that time of year versus any other time of the year.
Yeah, there's I've worked for some people that had some pretty deep pockets that we could. I mean, there would be specialty vehicles, and we would trade them, and we just knew that, okay, so we're going to sit on this one for 90 or 120 days. But when we take it to the sale, we're going to make a proverbial poop ton of money on the vehicle. But there's a lot of dealers out there that can't afford to tie up their cash in their inventory like that. They need it to be a tad bit more liquid. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, tell every living person you know that they need to subscribe to Car Sense.
Ray, so we have Stellantis that's being accused of being anti-American right here, and a mistake that has scared away buyers. And what they're talking about is these Ram trucks right here. So what has happened is they have gone away from this V8 model and put this 6-cylinder turbo in it, and that's a big problem with what we're seeing a lot in the market, and what we're seeing that a lot of consumers don't want. And then on top of that, we've been talking about, okay, now the EV is taking over the Hemi for your Chargers, your Challengers, and what are they doing?
Well, they're screwing up some great American brands or legacy American brands. Look, the automobile industry's changed. It was a gas induced vision that everybody had, and it was big V8 engines and Hemi engines, and what made Dodge and Chrysler the companies that they were is the engines. Everybody talked about their engines, and when you had to meet certain fuel efficiency standards set up by the government for fleets, you couldn't do it with all those V8 engines anymore. So they had to go to twin turbo V6s or inline sixes, and it destroyed the brand to a degree. It wasn't. I don't know if they were anti-American as much as they were trying to become a truly just global brand. But Americans by nature were a tad more stubborn than some other folks, and we don't take away my Hemi engines. Don't take away my big V8. Just don't do it. Don't have to, through software, pipe in the sound of what my engine should sound like when I'm now driving an EV. It is, so was it? I don't know that they were as un-American as they were just naive in their approach that we're going to raise prices beyond what our customer base can afford, and we're going to abandon our customer base. Now, if you want to call that anti-American, then for sure that's what Stellantis has been, because nobody raised their prices more than they did.
Isn't it just a slap in the face to someone who wants to hear that motor, and they just have this digital recording?
No, absolutely it is. And the sad part is that the new Challenger in the EV model will go. It's faster than with the ICE engine in it, but it's got. You drive an EV. I mean, most EVs don't really have much of a soul, and that's what muscle cars had. The rumble, the exhaust, just the sound of the engine. We don't have that in an EV. Okay, so you got to pipe it in. You got to make it up. It's all artificial. It is. I mean, think about it.
I know. I get it. It just sounds so ridiculous. Every time I hear it, it just makes me laugh.
Yeah. I mean, and that's. I mean, I remember. I want to say as a kid, but I remember like 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and I had a mini Roadster, the little 2-door 2-seat convertible. When Zach was a senior in high school, I bought it, and it was the S, and there was a switch. You could put it in sport mode, and I would put it in sport mode just so I could hear it. What I say, just so we can hear it fart, honey, because you and it just sounded like it was farting through the exhaust system, and just the shake of the car when you don't have that in an EV. Okay, it doesn't. So yeah, I mean, I would miss that. I used to love driving a JCW and listen to it backfire. I mean, there's just something special about that.
No, I get it. I had a 350Z before my wife and I got married, and it was so loud and it
Uh-huh.
sounded so good, and I was cool. And turns out that my wife hated it, so I got rid of the car and I got the girl. So I like that trade off, but I understand it. But now in my older age, it sounds obnoxious to me at this point. But it's just so funny that they would just digitalize that sound and then put it in. But what a miss that this is not going to work. Because have you ever heard of a more perfect name for an EV other than a charger?
Oh, I know. It's perfect. I mean, yeah, let's hook it up to the charger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And by the way, your wife said she hated the car and you were not cool.
I was cool, and
no,
she
no,
doesn't have a microphone right now, so she has no opinion on this right now.
You thought you were cool. You know, let's face it. Why do you think so many guys drive sports cars? Because they think it makes them cool. They're not. The car's cool. The guy's the guy. Okay. I used to work with a guy, a salesperson, and he went out and Darren, God bless him, he had a tough time getting girls, and so he went out and he bought a Porsche, and he had Momo shifter knob and all kinds of shit. And I mean, he used to always think, he says, "Hey, how would you like to get your hands on my Momo?" You know, it was like, come on, you know, you're still an asshole, but you got a really nice car. You know, it's not. It's the car doesn't make the man. And the man don't make the car. I'm just saying. So you might have thought you were cool. When I had my Opel GT, I thought I was cool. I wasn't cool. The car was cool. I was just the schmuck behind the wheel.
I heard I can't remember if it was a podcast or it was a YouTube video, but a guy who had a lot of really nice, really expensive cars, and he was talking about like this concept that
Yeah.
okay, if you have the really cool cars, then you get the girls. Like all the girls will come up to you, want to see your car or whatever. He was like, I've never even had one female come up to me around these cars. It's all guys that want to come see these cars. The women, they don't care about these cars.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's just funny the way that a lot of men think when they're growing up is, okay, I want to have this cool car and this is going to get me the women, right? But in all reality, that's not the case at all. And I'm living proof of this. I had this cool little sports car. I got rid of it and then got a 1998 Mazda 626 that had the hardest hitting transmission from second to third gear. It would move you forward in your seat when it would go from second to third gear. And for me to be able to switch to that car and use that money to start my own business, my wife thought that was way more attractive than me driving this loud, cool car ever.
Hey, it is men's own deficiencies within themselves that cause us to go out and buy sports cars.
Ray, I was about to say I'm tired of having a child, but that's not. I was going to lead in. That's the wrong thing to say. So it seems like ever since my son, who is 6 years old, has been in school, and we had him in preschool, so since 4. Either me, myself, or my wife have been constantly. It's one of us. One of the three of us have been sick, and now it is my turn. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I feel like you're going to be leading a lot of this show today.
Well, you know, there's one thing I'm good at in life, and that's just talking and never shutting up. So it shouldn't be an issue. And one of the joys of having children is sending them off to school and having them interact with, I don't know, 20 or 30 other children. And when one or two of them get sick, that means the rest get sick. and they're kind enough and gracious enough to bring that illness home to share with you and Mrs. Carr questions answered. I mean, it's the way it is. Get used to it. He's 6.
He's
and
6 years old. Yeah.
and he's in first grade.
He is in kindergarten. He had a
Kindergarten.
late birthday. Yep.
Okay, so you just got another 13 years of this. Don't worry about a thing.
Well, that's if he passes every grade, and I can go ahead and tell you he's my son. So there's going to be a couple holdbacks, I think.
Well, I know they wanted to keep me back in first grade, and my parents, bless their hearts, said no way. We want this to end sooner rather than later. So it turned out that back in the 60s when I went to school, I don't think anybody really talked about attention deficit disorder, but had they would have included me in the conversation because
now every kid's got it.
Yeah, well, I had it before it became popular for every kid to have it. So
you were cool before it was cool.
I was never cool, but I was a trendsetter long before I realized I was a trendsetter.